Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Chapter 6 is entitled The High-Tech Global Flows and Structures, tackling about technology, media, and the internet. I am Lady Johainee Banocag, and I am assigned to report to you about technology. Under technology are 5 subtopics, which includes medical technologies, space-based technologies, leapfrogging, India's 1 lakh car or nano, and problematic technological flows. So just an introduction, technological changes of all sorts have played a huge role in globalization. These technological changes had and still have a huge influence on global processes for many years and more. And it is very clear that these technological changes are also becoming more and more developed or advanced, that it created or helped created more global processes. One example of such a more recent technological development in the realm of commerce was the creation of the world's first container ship in 1956. Instead of loading and unloading goods of various sorts, containers already filled with products were loaded on and unloaded from ships. Similarly, the development and expansion of air freight greatly speeded up the transportation of goods and in some cases even reduced costs. A key technological development here was the introduction of the Boeing 747 in 1970 with its wide body, and the arrival soon afterward of a cargo version of the plane. Another important advancement also occurred in 1970 with the founding of Federal Express, or also known as FedEx. While FedEx was and is an innovative organization, the key technological advance associated with it involved the use of computer technology to track deliveries of packages by jet planes and other conveyances. The rest is history, as FedEx has become a household name and a visible presence throughout the world. Then, there is the seemingly modest creation of the Universal Product Code, or UPC, which began in the grocery stores in the US in June 1974. This has greatly expedited the movement of products from all over the world to warehouses and ultimately retail outlets across the globe. So, from the point of view of globalization, in fact, perhaps from any point of view, all of these developments are great, yes, but these are nothing compared to the creation of the first personal computers in the mid-1970s and the internet in the 1990s. Personal computers and the internet are now deeply implicated in and essential to all of the technological developments mentioned earlier, as well as most others. Why? Because every technological invention we could think of are managed and functioning with the use of computer and the internet. Personal computers and the internet really paved the way for global internet transactions and interpersonal relationships of all sorts. All of the things I mentioned are just few of the technological advances that have contributed greatly to the globalization of commerce and of interpersonal relations. Not only are there innumerable other technological advances in the areas that could be mentioned here, but the globalization of every other realm covered in this course has been affected and greatly expedited by technological change. We are just at the tip of the iceberg. We are yet to discuss the 5 other subtopics under technology, starting with medical technologies. New healthcare technologies such as MRIs, CAT scans, PET scans, and Da Vinci robotics have not only been created at a rapid rate, but because of global improvements in transport, they flow around the world much more rapidly than ever before. These are extraordinarily expensive technologies, and they are created in northern countries. The developed countries are able to afford these technologies and they spread throughout their places. This is especially the case for the world leaders like Japan and the United States, which possess an extraordinary number of these technologies relative to the size of their populations. The machines are not only more likely to exist in developed countries, but they are more likely to be used intensively because patients, either on their own or because of health insurance, are able to afford the very expensive scans, tests, and surgeries associated with them. Also concentrated in developed countries are the highly trained personnel needed to run and maintain the machines, administer the tests, and interpret the results of, say, an MRI scan. In contrast, few of these technologies flow to less developed southern countries. They are used there less intensively, and there are relatively few trained people there capable of conducting the tests and interpreting the results. The next subtopic is about space-based technologies. The space that surrounds the globe is, by its very nature, global and already involves and will increasingly involve globalization. Although the US has dominated this domain, especially through the launching of satellites, other nations are involved in and more generally affected by activities in space. In the military realm, space continues to be largely an American realm. For example, the US uses its satellites for surveillance of enemies and potential enemies throughout the world. However, that dominance is being and will be contested by others, especially China. And the ultimate fear here on many levels, including from the perspective of globalization, is a war in and over space that could truly devastate every part of the globe. However, space-based technology is not restricted to military uses. Satellites are used to transmit TV and other images around the world. Another important non-military uses are the global positioning systems or GPS that rely on satellites to allow those flying civilian airplanes as well as millions of automobile drivers to use global navigational systems or GNS in order to locate where they are and how they should get to where they intend to go. There are also many varieties of inexpensive and portable GNS devices that can be moved in and out of automobiles and can be used for other purposes, such as providing guidance for those who wish to go off-trekking or mountain climbing. Among other non-military examples of the use of space-based technology are space tourism, which Virgin Atlantic plans to develop, and Google Moon, which is sponsoring a competition among private companies to put a rover on the moon. How exciting, right? The third subtopic is about leapfrogging. Now, to understand this more, let us separate the two words existing in this word, leap and frog. If we are going to say our observations, the synonymous characteristic of the two words is hopping from one place and then landing to another place. This is just the same as the definition of leapfrogging in terms of globalization. While the flow of technological changes relating to globalization happens so gradually and systematically in many places, especially in northern countries, in some cases, these global technological changes occur irregularly, especially in southern countries. Why? It is because of the existing barriers to such flow in many parts of the world. For example, the lack of electricity in many parts of the world serves to exclude many new technologies. Of course, most technologies only function when there is electricity. Because of this, instead of flowing smoothly around the world, technological advances often hop over some areas while landing in others. Similarly, some geographic areas are able to skip over some technological advances and go straight to later developments. This is known as leapfrogging. For example, some countries have gone straight to solar energy or energy from biomass rather than building huge centralized systems for the transmission of power. Others have skipped the 20th century fixed-line phone systems and gone directly to the 21st century mobile phone technology. Like in Bangladesh, there are only 1 million landline phone connections in a nation of 150 million people. However, there are already 16 million cell phone users and 2 million more are being added every month. Globally, there are over 3.3 billion mobile phone subscriptions, but about 3 billion people, mostly in Africa and Asia, do not yet have access to cell phones. Bringing more cell phones to these areas would have an enormous impact on people's lives. It would also have a significant global impact, especially on the world economy and global social relationships. And many of those without cell phones understand this, since as soon as they have a modest increase in income, they invest in telecommunications technologies, especially the cell phone. This technology can increase their well-being and productivity. One example is fishermen off the coast of Kerala in southern India invested in cell phones and started using them to call around potential buyers before they could even bring their catch to the shore. Their profits went up an average of 8%, while consumer prices in the local market went down by 4%. More generally, one study showed that when a country added 10 cell phones for every 100 people, its GDP rose 0.5%. Even those people who live in remote areas and who lack computers can access the internet at centers with electricity. This allows them to access services considered basic in the northern countries, but only recently within their reach. In addition, people now download job applications in music, see school exam results, check news and crop prices, make inexpensive internet phone calls, or use web cameras to see relatives. Students from villages with few books now have access to online dictionaries and encyclopedias. In other words, while the rest of the world went through different evolutions before reaching the peak of a technological advancement, those countries with existing barriers were not able to witness those evolutions from time to time. And when the time came, they were able to break through some of those barriers. Their first experiences include the latest version of a certain technological invention. However, as promising as leapfrogging may be to developing countries, a World Bank study showed that most technologies that spread in this way do not find their way to very many people or do not spread very widely throughout developing countries. This is the case because of a lack of basic 20th century infrastructure in these countries, such as roads, railroads, schools, electrical grids, water pipelines, and sewerage systems. While leapfrogging may be useful to some in developing countries, more fundamental changes in infrastructure are needed in order to make most new technologies truly available to the bulk of the population. In addition to a lack of infrastructure, other barriers to the spread of advanced technology in less developed countries are widespread illiteracy, a lack of research and development capacity, a lack of strong systems to finance development, and the absence of strong and stable governments. Now, on to the next subtopic is India's 1 lakh car or Nano. A potentially dramatic new technological development in early 2008 was the creation by the Indian corporation Tata of the world's cheapest car, priced 1 lakh, that is 100,000 rupees or about only $2,500. From a technological point of view, the Nano is unimpressive and offers primitive and inexpensive automobile technology. For example, it offers only manual transmission and will generate a maximum of 33 horsepower. What is attractive and important about this car is that it is very affordable to most Indians. Because of this, large numbers of Indians will soon be driving their own automobiles, many for the first time. This will be a highly liberating experience for them, but it also means that the exhaust from many more automobiles will be polluting the atmosphere in India, and that will contribute enormously to the growth in carbon dioxide emissions and ultimately to worsening global warming. While road accidents and deaths will undoubtedly increase with the proliferation of nanos, in the short run, it will involve an increase in safety for many Indians who currently travel precariously by motorcycle, often with the child nestled at the front between the father and the handlebars and with the mother sitting side saddle in the rear. And finally, we reached the problematic technological flows, which is our last subtopic for the topic technology. From the title itself, problematic technological flows, we can immediately understand it is about the negative consequences brought to us by many, but not all technological flows. One example is the flow of military technology of all sorts that are usually used in wars. Later on in this chapter, some of my other groupmates will discuss some other problematic flows like computer viruses and spams, but of a more everyday character. Well, that's it. I hope you learned new things or even reminded of some things you used to know from my report. Again, this has been Lady Johainee di Maampaw Banocag, and I wish you all a good day. Assalamualaikum.